Welcome back to Chicago Sports Daily here on Fox. Cassie, Carlson, Canellis. Big Ten Conference play kicks off this weekend, and Fox Sports bringing the bright lights to Evanston tomorrow morning. The Big Saturday crew broadcasts from Northwestern. Cats open up conference play against the number 4 team in the country, the Oregon Ducks. And honored to bring in part of the Big Saturday crew here on Fox. You see them every Saturday morning. Quarterback, I'm still going to call you the quarterback, Brady Quinn, because I remember those days under the Golden Dome at Notre Dame. Thanks for taking a couple of minutes to join us. And before I get into the game itself, I need to ask you, have you had a chance to walk around Martin Stadium, the temporary home for the Cats, till their brand new Ryan Field is ready next season?
Well, Lou and Cassie, first off, thanks for having me, but I have not had a chance to go in the stadium, only kind of walked around the outside and a little bit here on campus, but you couldn't pick a more picturesque view right now of the lake as well as just campus. Everything looks beautiful.
Yeah, Brady, thanks for joining us. You know, Northwestern head coach David Braun, not one of those guys who's not just happy to have you and the Big Saturday crew there, but they're 27.5-point underdogs to Oregon. And as a player, what do you tell the guys before you head into a game like this and you look at an Oregon team who's averaging, 64 points per game over the first 2 weeks?
Yeah, look, you've got to play your game. You know, you can't worry about what the spread is, what this team has done in the past. None of that matters. You get your shot tomorrow to be able to take on arguably the best team in the country. You have to focus on each individual play, your execution, and trying to win that one-on-one battle. And look, I think I'd be lying to you if I said that this wasn't a tremendous challenge. This Oregon team has everything. I mean, they've got speed, they've got strength on both sides of the ball. And they've got a coach who every single year he's been at Oregon has continued to progress and get better and better. And mind you, this is a team that's bringing back 18 new starters this year. So it goes to show you the job they've done recruiting, developing, having depth on this roster, and also the transfer portal. And so all those things, when it comes down to it, they're not going to factor into the execution of each play. So you just really have to kind of focus in on taking care of the football and doing the best you can and slowing this Oregon team down.
Sorry about that, Brady. I don't ever remember Notre Dame being a 27.5-point dog. Were you?
Not that I can recall. Maybe when I first got there, but I don't know that we were that big of an underdog. I was also naive to betting lines, where it feels like nowadays that's become much more common talk.
Yeah, it was a different time back then. Let me ask you, Oregon put together one of its more dominant showings last Saturday. They crushed Oklahoma State 69-3. They did the same in their opener to Montana State 59-13. You touched on the offense. I mean, they have everything, man. They're averaging 10 yards a play. But let me look at it as a Northwestern fan, because I want to have a little hope going into this football game. And I look and I say, all right, Oregon's got its first road game and an early start, 9 a.m. for their bodies who are on Pacific time. You're a former player on the collegiate level, big-time football. Is it tough to get the body going that early, or is it all the same?
It might be tougher for some of those West Coast guys, but I hate to break it to the Northwestern fans. When you're a college football player, you're used to getting up early in the morning. 5 a.m., 6 a.m. workouts, then going to class after that, sometimes practice depending on the schedule that your team has. So talking with their quarterback, Dante Moore, earlier today, they've been preparing for this all week. They've been practicing early. They actually got here 2 days before the game, which is abnormal for Oregon. So I don't think the time zone is going to be the biggest adjustment. I think it's honestly going to be the atmosphere. I mean, this is a team that's used to playing in front of 60,000+ people. And that early start combined with the fact that it's a 12,000 person stadium, it's a little bit different of an atmosphere. And so I think if Northwestern can find a way of jumping out to a lead and being able to create some momentum, especially for some of the home fans, that's how you can maybe kind of scare this Oregon team into thinking maybe it's just not their day. Maybe you're able to take advantage of a few of their turnovers, a few of their mistakes, and Oregon lays an egg, the Ducks lay an egg, and you take advantage of that.
All right, you talked about them returning all those starters. They were beaten by national champion Ohio State last season handedly in the New Year's Day Rose Bowl. That was a really good team, but they had quarterback Dylan Gabriel. They were on a 14-game win streak before the loss to the Buckeyes. Is this Oregon team as good or still too early to tell?
I think they're as good, if maybe not better.
Wow.
And it's in part, too, because of the ceiling of their quarterback, Dante Moore, who I mentioned a minute ago. This young man has the potential to be a top 10 pick. He's that talented of a passer. He reminds me a lot of C.J. Stroud, who went number 2 overall and is now a starting quarterback at the Houston Texans. But that combined with their speed, more on the outside, Benson on the outside, they've got a ton of playmakers with a lot of speed. It just leads you to think that you're going to have to be able to score some points if you want to kind of, compete with this Oregon team. And defensively, they can match up. They can rush the pass, they can stop the run, they can do it all. So this team is really poised, I think, to build off of the success that Oregon's had the past few years, but even do more than that.
I know that you've got great knowledge of the rest of college football, and you guys were in Columbus, Ohio to start off the college football program here on Fox this season for the Ohio State-Texas game. Ohio State's top team in the country right now. Penn State's second. Do you think they stay 1-2 by November 1st when they meet in Columbus?
I do. I think if you look at the schedules too, they set up that way, where I think, you look at Penn State, for example, they host Oregon. And so you look at some of the roadblocks that either team could have before then, really it sets up where it could be a 1 versus 2 matchup. I don't see any way that either one of those teams would get jumped either if you look at the rankings and who those ranked teams have to play and thinking that some of those bigger wins might leapfrog them. So I think it's pretty safe to say you're going to see a number 1 versus number 2 in the Big Ten. And we'll see how things, shake out in the end. That's one of the things now with the Big Ten not having divisions. You could see a rematch between some of these teams, like Ohio State versus Penn State, or maybe another team on the schedule, Ohio State, Michigan. Who knows how the rest of the Big Ten schedule plays out.
Brady, I'm an Illinois grad, and when I was back at Illinois, not a football school, but credit to Brett Bielema for turning this program around and bringing football back to Champaign. Hasn't been in the top 10 since 2001. They had a 10-win season last year. They have Ohio State and USC coming to Champaign. Then they travel to Washington and Wisconsin. Would you be surprised if they made the 12-team college football playoff?
I wouldn't be surprised, but I think they have the work cut out for them. One of the reasons why they were such a hot team coming into the season because they returned so many players from last year, and last year was a solid season for them, but they won a lot of close games, 1-score games. Oftentimes, not that many games go in your favor, and so I'm curious with the schedule you just mentioned. Washington's a tough place to play. That's kind of a sneaky up-and-coming team people aren't talking about. Southern Cal, Ohio State, they've got to play, I believe, is IU maybe on their schedule? I have to go back and look, but they've got their work cut out for them. It's not an easy schedule for Illinois this season, so I'm kind of looking at that team as one where I got to see it to believe it because of how difficult their schedule is.
I can't let you get away without asking about your alma mater, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. You got a big game this weekend. Texas A&M in South Bend, played for the national championship last year. Tell me, what do you think of Marcus Freeman's club this year?
Well, look, I think they're a club that brings back a lot of experience in some of the right spots, but we've already seen them play week 1 versus the best teams in Miami, and they got pushed around. They've got to be better in the trenches, in particular on defense, in the interior of that defense, and the offensive line was getting beat too in the passing game, so they have to do a better job of protecting C.J. Carr, but he's really the bright spot, I think, for this team. For a redshirt freshman and his first start on the road to play the way he did was incredible. And so now it just comes down to, can they find a way of getting Jeremiah Love the ball more and early and often in that game versus Texas A&M? And then on the flip side for the defense, they've got to settle in and find a way of stopping Marcel Reed. He's a dual-threat quarterback for Texas A&M. He's effective through the air, but he's also dangerous with his feet. So being able to contain him will be a big piece of whether or not Chris Ash, the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, and his defense can get the stops to get off the field.
I'm telling you what, it is so great to have you and the guys, Coach Urban Meyer and Mark Ingram and everyone in town for the game, the Northwestern Wildcats against Oregon. And then in 2 weeks, you guys are back in the state. You'll be in Champaign.
It's a party town. Go to Cam's, get a blue guy.
I was going to say they're finally throwing Matt Leinart in the bone and allowing him to go to a game that USC's playing in. So I'm really there for the Fighting Illini, though. So we're looking forward to it. We always love coming here to Chicago, best city in the country, in my opinion. So happy to be here.
Love having you on. Thanks so much for taking the time, and we will talk to you in a couple of weeks. Thanks, Brady.
Thanks for having me.